What differentiates people that are sort of top 10, top 5 in the world from the rest, from everyone else? Throughout my entire career, I've been around elite level performers. I've also spent time in the cancer ward with kids who cannot even barely walk because they're going through chemo. Like I've been across the entire range of what humans are experiencing in this life. And if there was one thing that the high performers, and high performance doesn't mean achievement, like, surviving cancer is high performance. Can be anywhere on the spectrum, but you're reaching your potential in that moment, whatever that is.
How do you separate the emotion from the logic of those decisions?
You're responsible for people's safety in an environment that is dangerous, so where you can die if you don't do things right.
You go to the doctor and you're told you have only 1 year to live. What are you going to do differently now?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I have run up against this question before.
Who's been your biggest influence?
Oh my gosh, let me think about that. That's a really, really good one. As you go through your life, I think that there are what I call shatter points, where your life is going to go in one direction or another, and you can't just carry on. And I think that periodically through my life, certain individuals have shown up to put me on the right direction at those shatter point moments. So, for example, I had the opportunity to have an internship, a postdoctoral fellowship at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. And I was able to get to work with someone, Dr. Ingrid Tyne, who's one of the most brilliant metabolic researchers literally on the planet. And for some reason, she took me under her wing, and that literally launched my career on a completely different trajectory because she challenged me so much. So I'm grateful to Dr. Tyne. And then, earlier on in my life, there were a series of swim coaches who were absolutely critical, Jim Fowley and Cliff Berry and Derek Snelling and, Mike Blundell. So there was kind of like throughout my life, these magical people that showed up to like really, really challenge you. And so I view my life in shatter points and the influence in the influential people that were with me at those particular times that increased or elevated the trajectory of my life. So I don't know if I could say that there's one person, but certainly at like critical moments, like these shatter points where you just can't keep going down the same road anymore. You have to change. There was always someone there who was awesome, who really pushed me in the right direction.
At those shatter points, you built knowledge over time, and those people helped you gain that knowledge. What advice would you give your younger self prior to some of those major shatter points?
That's such an interesting question, and it's one that I've contemplated so much. Like, if I could go back, would I tell myself to do anything differently? And the reality is, like, I know that right now things are awesome. I'm very grateful for where I am. I've got a healthy family. I've got a great life. I've got an awesome career. I've got incredible friends, brilliant wife who loves me miraculously still, despite the crazy life that I live. And in reality, if you were to take me back and say, Greg, tell yourself something, I'm not sure that I would. However, if we really force it and okay, well, you got to say something, what I would probably say is go more all in. And what I mean by that is I was committed to things throughout my life. And there were a few occasions where I really pushed the limits. Like I really went as hard as I possibly could and did the best that I could. For example, I commentated the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver for Canadian television. And I did a series called Super Bodies. And in that 3 weeks that I was at the games, I did nothing else. I worked 18 hours at least a day. I went and did 20 rehearsals for every 2-minute segment that I had on camera. Like I was doing research, I was talking to people, I was prepping, I was, deconstructing. Like I was so totally all in that particular moment. And that's without question, probably the highest performing I've ever been in anything I've ever done ever. So if I was to go back and tell myself anything before those shatter points, it would be like, go more all in, 90%. is okay. It's what you're going to do, but you have an opportunity for even more. And that's what I would encourage myself to do. And that goes like right back to, high school, university, training for swimming, being a grad student, being a researcher. Like more all in, I think is a through line. And I'm like I said, I'm happy, but I think it could have been incrementally better if I was just a little bit more committed to the things that really, really mattered.
So we've talked about being taken under somebody's wing, as we don't know why, to going all in. How much of your journey would you say was luck versus your skill?
I think that a lot of the journey had to do with putting in astronomical amounts of work at critical moments to overcome challenges. And I really don't see luck playing much of a role at all, frankly. I broke my neck when I was 15 and was able to return to competitive swimming after that, got up to sort of high level national, barely international on a couple of occasions. And that was just huge amounts of work and physiotherapy and training and not listening to people who told me I couldn't do it. And, I'm surrounded by amazing teammates. And then in grad school, once I was able to get into grad school, which was a story in and of itself, and, studying physiology and studying endocrinology and studying how the human body works, there being, pushing super hard, failing my comprehensive exams, taking 6 months off, diving deep, relearning everything that I knew to make sure that the second time that I did the exam, I would do well, which I fortunately did. I think there was just that flat out, complete commitment in those moments that resulted in the trajectory of my life and not so much luck. Obviously, I'm sure that luck and chance played some roles at some points, but I can't really think of any, to be completely honest. Like, I just think it was overwhelming amounts of work to overcome challenges, as they presented themselves. And that's what shifted the trajectory of my athletic career. And, after an injury, and my academic career, despite a few significant setbacks, and even in my now professional career, where things like COVID came along and destroyed my speaking career, and having to pivot to digital and then rebuilding. And, so I, over and over and over again, it's just setbacks or challenges that were overcome through extraordinarily high amounts of really, really hard work to make sure that things went in the right direction. After those, if the theme for this talk might be shatter points, but after those little shatter points that come through life.
This is Elemental Conversations, where leadership isn't just talked about, it's tested. I'm Tyler, your host, helping you lead with your values, push through adversity, roll with change, and make bold decisions. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and if you're ready to challenge the status quo, then get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator, and now your host, Tyler Como.
Alchemists, welcome to a new episode. Dr. Greg Wells loves to steal all of the wonderful introductions I was going to say about him so kindly here. But that being said, some of the things not said is he is a scientist, a human physiologist, and a best-selling author who translates complex science into practical strategies for health and peak performance. After breaking his neck at age 15 and returning to elite level swimming, he completed endurance events like the Naniskovik Marathon, 600 miles north of the Arctic Circle, Ironman Canada, and the Tour de Africa, an 11,000-kilometer cycling race that is the longest in the world. Dr. Wells earned a PhD in human physiology, was a tenured professor at the University of Toronto, and is now a senior scientist at Sick Kids Hospital. He's written 5 best-selling books and hosted the award-winning Superbody series, which aired on Olympic broadcasts worldwide in 2010 and 2012. Dr. Wells' moonshot is to solve the billion-person problem of sleeplessness, metabolic syndrome, inactivity, and mental health. To that end, He's the founder of Wells Performance, a consulting firm committed to helping teams, schools, and businesses become places where people get healthy, perform optimally, and reach their potential. Dr. Greg Wells, it is my pleasure to welcome you onto the Elemental Educator podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Tyler, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great.
Pleasure is all mine. And alchemists, as you listen, this has been a long time in the making over the last several months of us connecting, trying to line up schedules. And so my excitement here is we finally get to have this incredible conversation on my platform as you came to my school division and shared a wonderful keynote and a follow-up professional development after. And I'm just excited to continue the conversation. We are going to actually jump into our first segment here, all about what we value, all about how we use those values to overcome things. And so without further ado, we're going to jump into grounded moments.
3, 2, 1.
Grounded Moments is all about our values, and there is no better way to see what we truly stand for than to play a game. Every leader starts somewhere, and it's not usually glamorous. Greg, I'm going to take 2 minutes to try to guess your very first job, okay?
Okay.
So think of your very first job. Don't tell me it. First paying job, I should say. 2 minutes. If I don't figure it out, and only yes or no questions, you can choose to keep it a secret, or you can tell us after. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Was it indoors?
No.
Did you wear a uniform?
Yes.
Did it involve a food service?
No.
Did you earn tips in any way?
No.
Was it part-time during school?
No. Full-time summer.
Full-time summer. Okay. Seasonal work then?
Yes,
Okay. You worked outdoors.
I did.
Did you interact with the customers?
Yes.
Okay. Did you clean as a part of the job?
Oh, yeah.
Was it minimum wage?
No, quite a bit higher than minimum wage.
Did you sell something?
No.
So it wasn't a service you were providing? Or
Not
it was a
necessarily.
service, it wasn't a physical object you were selling. It was a
not
cleaning
selling a
service.
physical object.
Okay.
That was part of the job.
Okay. Was it for a big company?
Yes.
Was it physical labor?
Kind of, but not really.
Was it working with kids?
There were a lot of kids around.
Was it like a summer camp?
Close. Really close.
Did you need a training or a certificate?
Yes.
Okay. Did it involve sports or recreation?
Recreation.
Were you a coach of some sort?
Kind of, but no, not specifically.
Oh, no. Did your friends have the same job?
Yes.
Oh. Would you recommend your
swimmer.
kids do it?
100%.
Okay. Were you a lifeguard?
I was. Yeah. That was
There we go. And I got 5 seconds left before 2 minutes are up. We got our first career as lifeguard. What I want to know is, what did that first job teach you about leadership?
So, I had a Bronze Cross, and most of my friends had NLS, which is the National Lifeguarding Service, which is a higher level of training than I had. So I did not get hired by the city of Toronto where I lived. I got hired by the Metro Toronto Housing Authority, which was the organization that oversaw public housing in and around Toronto. So it was lower income areas, and they all had pools, and so I was the lifeguard at those pools. And so when you said it was cleaning, like I would go in and fix all the broken pools all the time, and parents would drop their kids off at the pool in the morning, and they would be there until the evening because parents were off working. Some of the locations were in rough, economically disadvantaged areas, and it was really, really challenging and interesting due to the socioeconomic environment. So I learned a tremendous amount about the world at that point and interacting with people and keeping things going. So, for example, I would always find the drug dealers, and I would make sure that I was friends with the drug dealers and that they knew who I was and that I was the lifeguard, and so that they would keep the pool relatively safe. That way, I could do my thing. They would do whatever they wanted to do. And so there was just a lot of learning in and around that from by a young kid coming from North Toronto and private school education and all those sorts of things. So, infinitely privileged. So to spend my summers in that environment, which was very, very different from the way that I was growing up, I think was really, really, really good for me. And I loved it. I had an accident on my very first day ever of lifeguarding. And then for the next 8 years that I guarded, I never had another one. So that was also kind of interesting. But I loved it, and all my friends did it. And my daughter's getting her lifeguard certifications. I think it's a great job, and I think it's awesome because you have big responsibility. Like, you're responsible for people's safety in an environment that is dangerous, so where you can die if you don't do things right. So I know it was really, really great first job to have, for sure.
And it sets the foundation for what we talked about earlier, which is going all in, developing a bit of a work ethic. It gets your mindset shifted to, okay, we're starting to enter where I get to decide what outcomes we start to have. So your job and how easy it was to be a lifeguard was going to be dictated by the amount you put in to being a lifeguard. It didn't, if you were bad at your job, being a lifeguard was probably very hard, and you probably would have ended up with a lot more accidents than just one on the first day. So to think about that contrast, just the idea of the work you put in is going to make your life easier in the long run, right? It's that idea of being proactive. So
yeah, for example, I would show up at the pool. Many of these pools were not well taken care of because they're underfunded. And I would show up, and it wasn't my job to fix the filter system, but I'd show up in the morning and the pool was broken, and the water would be cloudy, and it's hot in the summer and kids have nothing else to do. So they've got to go in. So on many, many, many occasions, I'd go in and try to figure out how to fix the filters. This is before the internet. I'm old. So it was before you could just look something up on your phone. And I figured out how to do the chemicals and make sure that the chemicals were working. And if the water was cloudy, dump muriatic acid in until it's not cloudy anymore, which, kills all the stuff, and then run the filters at high for a little while to get the pool going. And it might open up late, but it opened. And so, being proactive around making sure that you're able to do what you need to do, despite the situation not being great, despite being under-resourced, not accepting excuses or using excuses. I could easily have sat there and been like, the pool's broken, and done nothing all day and still gotten paid. I think that that's definitely something that has stuck with me forever. It's just like, there's no excuses. You got to find a way. Even if it's not working, there's got to be someone somewhere has figured out how to make a pool work, so you can too. And I think that was really, really instructive and influential on me growing up. And that's definitely an attitude that I've continued to take ever since, for sure.
And a good attitude at that. And so with that, we talked about shatter points, which I think is just going to become a theme of the show here. From that early job through your shatter points to where you are now, you've worked with some pretty high profile people. You've done some pretty high profile things. What are the top 3 indicators you look for when recognizing this is somebody that is going all in?
I've contemplated what differentiates people that are sort of top 10, top 5 in the world from the rest, from everyone else. And I'm very, very fortunate that in my career as a physiologist and working with the Canadian Sport Institute, that I had the chance of working with literally hundreds of Olympic level athletes across multiple different sports, many, many Olympic medalists, and a few world record holders. And then similarly in business, I'm a consultant, performance consultant, and have been since I was 25 years old for some of the highest performing executives in finance and professional services. So throughout my entire career, I've been around elite level performers. I've also spent time in the cancer ward with kids who cannot even barely walk because they're going through chemo. Like, I've been across the entire range of what humans are experiencing in this life. And if there was one thing that the high performers, and high performance doesn't mean achievement, like, surviving cancer is high performance, can be anywhere on the spectrum, but you're reaching your potential in that moment, whatever that is curiosity. You would think that the top 3 in the world, the Olympic medalists, would be less curious. You would think that they would know what they're doing. You would think that they would not be asking questions. Yet, when you interact with someone who's sort of 50th to 100th in the world, they will have a lot more certainty in what they're doing than people who are top 10 in the world, who tend to ask a lot more questions. They're a lot more curious. They're a lot more open to feedback. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed, and an attitude that I've tried to cultivate, and an attitude that I've tried to teach my kids, is that sure, you may be pretty sure about something, but science is constantly evolving. We're constantly learning. And so what we know to be true now, as we learn, as we experiment, as we grow, may prove not to be totally the case. And our thinking grows and our consciousness evolves. And that's really, really important. So curiosity constantly keeps you moving forwards, and holding yourself to account for that, I think, is really, really, really important.
So you'll probably hate where this question goes next. Or love it. There's a value in here of personal growth, professional development that drives curiosity. How do you train that into somebody?
Yeah, how do you cultivate an attitude of curiosity in an era when everything is being fed to you in, short video format to capture and hold your attention with some nugget that's, designed to get you to click, not necessarily to think? This is really, really, really difficult right now. And so I believe strongly in reading. Crazy concept. And actually like reading books, and not just an article, but the entire book, and thinking your way through that, and watching documentaries, not TikTok, and reading the research papers, not what some random influencer who got their medical degree on YouTube is saying. So going deep right now, I think, is really, really important. And the more that you learn, the more you realize that you don't know. That's one of the painful, I know there's a section on groundedness in this podcast, but one of the most painful moments in my academic career is I was doing my doctorate and my PhD. First, you do your coursework, and then you get your research approved, and then your field is defined, and then you have to do, or you had to do, now you don't have to do this anymore, but when I was going through, you have to do something called a comprehensive exam, which is that you have to write essays for experts in the field. They send you the question. You've got one day to put together these 4 essays. They actually give you 5, and then you can choose not to do one of them. You then go into, a couple days later, a 4-hour oral exam on that content. And you start with the essay you didn't answer. So they've got your written answers, and whatever you didn't answer, that's where they start, and they grill you on everything to do with your thesis and your knowledge area. And for me, it was respiratory physiology and exercise phys and some statistics stuff as well, and a little bit of engineering. And the first time that I did that, I failed. And not like a little bit. It wasn't close. I was not good. I didn't know the foundational work. I didn't know the textbooks. I hadn't memorized enough of the equations. I wasn't super familiar with the previous research. Like, I kind of superficially knew everything. But the second that you began to unpack it into the mechanisms of action, or the underlying physiology, or the physics of blood flow and the airways and those sorts of things, like, my knowledge broke down, and I just wasn't very good. And that was the first time where I was really confronted with what it means to truly understand something and really have a depth of knowledge that you can rely upon. So I ended up canceling everything. I quit my coaching job. I moved myself into a different apartment. I blocked everything. I did nothing else but study for 6 straight months, like 12 to 16 hours a day. I would get up, I would go for a run, I would sit at my desk and study for like 6 months, and ended up going back and doing fantastic on the second round, which is great, because if you fail the second time, you're out of your doctorate. So like that learning mode, like that humility of the fact that, yeah, you've got an undergrad degree, you've got your master's, you've been studying for 2 years, and you know nothing. Like, that was really, really important. And I think that one of my supervisors, Dr. James Duffin from the University of Toronto, who's, massive influence on my life and one of the most brilliant people I've ever encountered, he's a respiratory physiologist. He was not going to let me off the hook. Like, as soon as he detected that I was kind of a little bit full of it when I was going through it, he was like relentless. He just kept breaking me down, tearing things apart. He was like, what about this? And then what about that? And it was just like carnage in my brain for 2 hours. under the gaze of his questioning. And so like he pushed me and encouraged me and supported me, and I retook a couple of his courses and he retaught me everything from scratch. That's really, really critical right now, because there's so much superficiality and there's so much certainty and polarization and not listening and not thinking. And I think that right now that science and education and learning has never been more important, in conjunction with empathy, curiosity, copathy, which is empathy in two directions, and really trying to understand others so that we can then seek to be understood ourselves. So it's all, I know it's a long-winded answer to your question or comment, but I think it's a really important thing right now for sure.
And I'm just sitting here thinking a few things. And one of the first ones is your exam was much more intensive than my exam that I did last week, which was 40 minutes about how do we construct this to make it better. So you're right, that exam has totally changed. But congratulations on coming back and pushing through it. Another is, I, as somebody that runs a podcast thriving off of connection through social media to try to get that reach on the podcast, I'm guilty of the short content where we do try to get the people to then come and watch this long episode to pull some meaning from it. So I'm curious, how do I, in 30 seconds to an audience, get to that level of richness to a point where they want to dive deeper? How do you spark that curiosity?
Well, I think that that's the spark of curiosity. If there's a snippet from this show that is interesting to people and that gets them to be part of your ecosystem such that they can then dive deeper into your content and learn more of what they're interested in, I think that that's fantastic. I do the exact same thing. I will also publish snippets from this podcast on my social media to bring people into the realm of what we do, and hopefully share this episode with them and they can see it as well. I think that that spark of curiosity is the key, as long as you then follow it up with long form content, deep dive content, evidence-based content that is positive, that is constructive, that is designed to uplift the world. That I think is absolutely fine. And it's exactly what I do. We push out, and I consider myself a broadcaster much more than a consumer of social media, because I don't like wasting a ton of time on it. And it also then leads us into a really important evolution of where I hope the internet goes. And that is to the trusted web, where people will curate a group that they follow or listen to or consume their content, learn from. And that trusted group of advisors, which you can build around yourself, and that could be an author with an audiobook, it could be a podcast where they interview world-class people. That trusted web that you build around yourself is going to be very, very important. It's very different than just randomly seeing things cross your feed that are designed to capture and hold your attention based upon what you've previously looked at. This like curating the people that elevate you, who challenge you, who you can learn from, that you trust. And so if you and I are, by pushing our information and thoughts out into the world, are able to be trusted advisors for people, I'm all in on that, because I think, we're doing evidence-based work. We're making recommendations based on research and science. We're trying to elevate people. We're trying to make people better. I think that's what it's all about right now. And if it starts with a small snippet to spark curiosity, that's cool. We just got to make sure that we're following it up with evidence and research and stories and inspiration and clear paths for people to take as we try to build this beautiful life in a sea of chaos and uncertainty.
Yeah. Alchemist, I think this is a good time to share with you as well that I've started a new segment on every week. So if you're not familiar, if you just listen to the podcast, know that every Thursday as well, I put a 5-minute or less video out analyzing the episode that we just recorded. So when this one with Dr. Greg Wells comes out on the Monday, you can expect on the Thursday an applied leadership to come out, where you're also going to see 6 scholarly articles referenced and insights on how to action what we've talked about today. And everything will be linked in the descriptions. And then keep in mind that on Sundays, I put out a free resource that was inspired from the episode that's tied into the research that we did on the Applied Leadership Thursday. So please make sure that you're tuning in on that to connect everything. Now, we did talk about some adversity, some setback here. We're going to jump into our air element and talk about that adversity and get into headwinds and tailwinds. And to get into the comfort zone of mistakes, we are going to play another game for another element. Adversity doesn't wait, so neither can we. Welcome to Hot Seat, Dr. Greg Wells. This is where quick adversity, quicker answers are going to happen. I'm going to give you a real world challenge that people will face, and you've got 10 seconds or less to give me your first move. Okay?
Let's do it.
Your presentation tech crashes 5 minutes before a keynote. What's your first move?
Turn off my computer and realize that I'm just going to be speaking, not using any tech whatsoever, and my slides are gone.
And that's going to be deeper anyway when people get to the end of that. A top performer quits unexpectedly. What's your first step?
Ask them how they're feeling. Like, really, how are you feeling right now? I think that emotional connection matters in those moments.
Your big idea gets rejected in a meeting. How do you respond?
You have to deconstruct it to figure out why it was rejected and take responsibility for it. It's on you, not them.
And probably similar here, your team misses a huge deadline. What's your first action?
Take 100% responsibility, because obviously I wasn't clear about what I needed to have done and what the deadlines were, and I didn't support everybody enough to get the job done in the amount of time that was required.
And you're on the brink of burnout mid-project. How do you reset yourself quickly?
Food. I think that when you're in the middle of burnout, but you've still got to go, the key is world-class nutrition. That'll keep you going enough just to get across the finish line. And not
there
like
we go.
junk. We're not like just sugars. We're not talking about that, right? I'm like, get some berries, get some nuts, get some water, get some espresso, get across the finish line. I know that was more than 10 seconds.
No, and that was great. And there's the hot seat. Now, I'm curious, from all of that, some of that is probably from experience. Maybe it's conversations with others. What is something throughout your journey that you had to unlearn?
I think that in overcoming adversity, and let me tell you, there has been a lot of that. And I know that I push a lot out on social about, the successes and those sorts of things. And the reality is that everyone has had massive setbacks. Like, I broke my neck. I got rejected from my master's when I applied for my master's the first time. I had to go upgrade for a year before they'd let me back in. Failed my comps. Volunteered for 8 months at the hospital for sick children before getting an actual job there to prove myself. My daughter Ingrid getting viral encephalitis and nearly dying, and losing some of her hearing, and rehabilitating Ingrid there. COVID destroying my public speaking business in 8 hours, and then rebuilding that. So, like, over and over and over again, life challenges us. And so those moments of adversity are significant. And I guess what I needed to, not so much what I needed to unlearn, but what I ended up learning was radical responsibility. And radical means complete and thorough. And responsibility is actually broken apart into two words: response-ability. So you have the ability to respond. This is not anyone else's fault. It's not anyone else's problem. It's not, no one else cares. This is your thing. And so you have to deal with it. You have to come up with the solution. You've got to find a way. And that response-ability has been a big, big part of, I think, my ability, along with Judith, my wife, and my kids, to overcome some massive obstacles and challenges, a lot of them health-based, for all of us, to enable us to move forwards and to overcome, despite pretty significant setbacks, or what we've had is in terms of setbacks.
One of the things I tell people around me is we always get to choose how we respond to situations. We can't control the situation that's happened. To some extent, we maybe can, but for the most part, it's a reactive situation to respond to a situation. But you can control that response. And if we can control that, similar to what you're saying, you get to dictate the next steps. You get to start that proactive mindset, that end in mind mindset right now with how you're viewing that point. I'm curious from that, are you willing to share one of the bigger mistakes that you made and how that helped you create that mindset for yourself?
Hmm. To be completely honest, like when I look back, I'm not sure if I feel like I've made any real big mistakes. I know that I've failed a lot. I don't know about mistakes. I think that if there have been any moments that I regret, actions that I've taken where I'm like, that wasn't very good. You could certainly have done better, especially when you look back in hindsight. The vast majority of those moments that didn't go well, and I'm beating around the bush because I can't really think of one massive one that at least that I'd be willing to share in this particular moment. But I think that all of them come down, like whenever there's been a situation that has not gone well, the vast majority of time it's because I reacted. And reacted is a instinctive response that is fast, that is not thoughtful and deliberate. It's usually based on a negative emotion, and it usually involves lashing out or saying something or taking an action that is fairly aggressive, fairly fast. Not a great way for us to deal with a challenging situation. Reactions are never ideal, or very rarely ideal, unless they're highly trained reactions, that you've prepared for and practiced. It's the second that we can create some space between the stressful event and what we do, think, or say in response to that event. The more time that we create, the less of a reaction it is, and the more of a response it is. I learned this from Special Forces soldiers and SWAT team members that I had the chance to hang out and chat with and train with. That what they do often is they'll try to create space and time. They'll try to create space between themselves and whoever they're interacting with, and they'll try to create time between the moment and when they have to respond. And that space and time gives them the chance to think, to say, and to do what they really want to do, what they should be doing. It reduces the emotional reaction and it increases the likelihood of a deliberate and intentional response to that particular situation. This is not easy to do. It's really, really hard. Breath work helps. That's why box breathing is often used in those particular moments. And that's what enables us to get away from these reactions or stop us from making mistakes that compound and just get worse and worse and worse because you're just reacting and digging yourself down into a hole. It enables you to stop. It enables you to breathe, to think, and then to respond, that response dash ability, rather than to react. So I've had many, many failures, probably have many, many regrets about the way that I have acted or behaved or spoken in the moment. And I think that in the moments where things have gone well, I've created that space and time so that I could respond. And when things looking back haven't gone well, I'm like, that was a reaction. I'm not super thrilled or proud about that. And that's, I think, the biggest differentiating factor is just give yourself permission to take a beat, pause, so that you respond, you don't react. And that'll save you so much stress and regret as you move through life. Maybe an ideal will come up for me to give you a perfect example of that. But that's the theme that I think I've evolved with over time.
So, very intentionally, you separated the word mistake from the word failure. And I'm curious why that was such a big separation between the two for you and what each one would then mean to you.
Yeah, mistake would be like, in my mind, doing something wrong, like making a choice that clearly you shouldn't have made. That is very different than a failure, which is trying to accomplish something and not having the skills or the abilities, or losing to someone who was better than you. Like there's a very big difference between making a mistake, which is a decision that was incorrect or a choice that was incorrect or there's some sort of actual error. Whereas failure is you tried to do something, you did your very, very best, you just weren't good enough. And that's when we learn. It's in failure that you learn. It's not in success that you learn. Like athletes, when you're preparing for the Olympic Games, in the weeks leading into the Olympics, you don't choose practice competitions against people who are worse than you. You don't choose people that are lower down the world rankings to go test yourself against. You test yourself against people that are better than you, because it's only when you play against people that are better than you that you find out what your weaknesses are and where you need to work. And so I love failure. I'm a massive fan of failure. And we live in an era when failure is I avoided at all costs because of the possibility of you showing up on social failing. Like I could not be more thrilled when my kids when my kids fail. Like if you're going to go down a mountain biking run and you fall and you scrape your knee, I'm thrilled. I don't want anyone to get injured, like long-term injured. That's not the point. But like falling down, getting a feel for the consequences, moving your way through fear and anxiety, maintaining a sense of calm in the face of an obstacle, thinking your way through a challenge, maybe not being successful, and then deconstructing why you were not successful, why you were unable to accomplish the task, then developing your capabilities, developing your knowledge, developing your skills, so that the next time that you go make an attempt, there's a greater chance for success. That's huge. There's a really cool study that I read on NCAA athletes that said that the only real predictor of progress in sports like volleyball and basketball was the number of failed attempts. And the higher the number of failed attempts, the faster the progress was in skill development for the athletes. So I'm a big fan of failure. I'm not a huge fan of making mistakes. Like if you make a mistake once, okay, whatever, it happens. If you make it the same mistake twice, that's when you've got to start asking yourself some questions. Same mistake 3 times, and that's on you. You need to really stop and figure it out. Yeah, there's a big difference between mistakes and failures. Mistakes are not the best. Try to avoid them at all costs, but failure is amazing. The more of that, the better.
I appreciate the definitions of each and weighing what each one actually means and how we should have a viewpoint on that. It wouldn't be the adversity element. We wouldn't be working on the air element if I didn't play another game with you and put you on the spot again. So we're going to take some of the toughest challenges leaders face and flip them into power. So this is called Flip the Script. I'm going to share a negative belief about adversity and give you 20 seconds to flip that into a powering reframe. So Great. The first one is stress just breaks people.
Stress is the key for growth.
You're going to like this one. Failure means you're not good enough.
Failure is the only way to get good enough.
Rest is for the weak.
If you don't rest, that's what will make you weak.
If you're struggling, you're falling behind.
If you're struggling, you're the only one that's going to get ahead. Like, it's so opposite. Like, and these, I love those questions because they're like so much what we hear. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like literally could not be more untrue.
That's
so
right.
Anyway, I love these. These are great. Thank you.
And one more for you. Adversity is always a setback.
Oh, adversity is the one thing that is going to be a through line for your life that presents you with the greatest opportunities for exponential growth.
They're your shatter points. And
your shatter points.
It's interesting because the segment is called Headwinds and Tailwinds. When I created the segment, my original thought was the headwinds would slow you down, but eventually they become a tailwind if you can turn it the other way to give you some momentum. And it wasn't until I interviewed somebody that had a pilot's license that said, actually, headwinds are also really good things because they can lift you up. And so it changed my perspective on the definition of even the segment itself. And I've decided to keep it as headwinds and tailwinds because I like to reference back to that whenever we do face adversity, just as we just said, whenever there is a failure, that means you're about to succeed. Maybe not the next one. You might fail again, but you'll get to that success point because each one is a step of learning. And with that, we start to talk about what we learn from changes and mistakes, from failures. And we get into our next segment, our water segment on ripples of change. And leaders don't need more theory, they need more solutions. So, one quick tip right now, I'm going to give you a leadership scenario question here. And again, kind of like what we just played, I want your sharpest piece of advice for this one, though.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what is your quick tip for handling stress?
Breathe. Honestly, like if you're in a moment and you have overwhelming stress, you're really, really tense, the most important thing is just that long, slow exhale. That'll just reset you and enable you to move forwards.
And what's your quick tip for getting focused fast?
Turn off your devices and block out all external distractions. Turn off email, turn off your phone, get rid of all of the windows on your computer that are not mission critical. Put yourself in a location where you're not going to get interrupted. Environment matters so much when you're trying to get focused.
What's your quick tip for leading through conflict?
Empathy. The most important thing is to seek to understand prior than seeking to be understood. If you ask other people how are they feeling and try to understand how they are feeling, that is the first key to overcoming conflict and moving forwards. And really listening, like seek to understand prior to seeking to be understood.
I've heard the Stephen Covey 7 Habits come out of you a little bit throughout the show, especially that seeking to
I
understand.
attended a seminar with him like in 1995 when I was like 24 years old. And it was a full day event at the Toronto Convention Center. I spent the whole day with him. It was early in his career. There were not a lot of people there. And there were two key things I learned from Stephen Covey. One was that seek to understand prior to being understood. And it's been with me for, 30 years since. And then the other one was the locus of control, which you alluded to earlier, which is that some things we can control and some things we cannot control. So direct your attention and energy towards the things that you can control and let go of the things that you cannot. Those two ideas have been so instructive for me in the 30 years since. So I'm glad you picked up that was a Stephen Covey quote.
Yeah. And I'm referencing locus of control when I give that explanation. I'm a Covey fan as well. And well, at least some of his messages I'm a fan of. And those points are definitely some that resonate with me as well. What is your quick tip for staying productive when you're tired?
The biggest thing to do when you're tired and you still need to be productive is micro breaks, whether it's a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Those micro breaks are enough just to bring you back up to baseline to keep you going. And it's really important to give yourself permission that when you're tired to take those micro breaks, because that'll get you across the finish line.
And one more here. What's your quick tip for bouncing back after a failure?
Take responsibility. It's 100% on you. Don't blame anyone else.
Love that. When you have to make a change, can you walk me through the steps that you take to go about that process?
I've been thinking about change so much recently. It is on everyone's mind, and we're living through an era of disruption and very rapid change. So this is really, really key. When we think about what's happening, what is change? It's simply that something is different. And when something is different, your amygdala, the structure in your brain that gathers information from your eyes and your ears, will make a decision about whether or not that something is different, that environmental shift is threatening or challenging. Is it negative or is it positive? Everyone's amygdala is different. That's why two people will see the exact same thing and have two completely different responses to it. So your amygdala has gathered this information about the environment being different. Your job has changed, the relationship has changed, and it decides whether or not that's threatening or challenging, it's positive or negative. Either way, your sympathetic nervous system becomes activated. That is your fight or flight response. In some cases, it can even be a fawn response, you freeze, so fight, flight, or freeze. And that stress response activates the systems in your body, mentally and physically and emotionally, to get you ready for action, to cope with that environment, to respond to that environment mentally, physically, or emotionally. Now, that response itself triggers adaptations. That response increases the number of neurons in your brain. It can strengthen your muscles. It can increase your blood volume to help you to adapt to that challenge and grow. Think about when you're a kindergartner and you're stacking blocks. That was stressful. That was really, really hard. You had to take a 3-hour nap afterwards. Now look at you. You're running a podcast, right? And you're doing whatever it is that you do in your job. Now you're capable of so much more. It's because of repeated changes and stress and adaptation over a long period of time. So right now, what I'm doing is thinking through when things are different, when I need to do things differently. I recognize that that is going to be stressful and that is going to trigger adaptation. That adaptation will cost energy. It costs energy to rebuild your brain neurons. It costs energy to build new muscle tissue. It costs energy to increase your blood volume. So in times of change, it's really important to adopt practices that energize you. Healthy food, great sleep, gentle but consistent exercise, meditation, journaling, right? All of these practices that help us to recharge, to re-energize. So in seasons of change, it's hard. It's hard because you're adapting. The way to help yourself to adapt is by increasing your energy, and all of your lifestyle practices that energize you are the keys to getting you through those seasons of change such that you can adapt.
And I think everybody should know at this point, I have an 11-month at home. And so I am still building blocks, and it is still really hard because she does continue to knock them down. And for 3 hours, I will stack blocks, and I need a nap after that one too. So
That's awesome.
It does continue to happen. It's a beautiful explanation though of how to start it. Now, how do you recognize when a change needs to happen?
It's really important to consider this because change is hard. Change costs energy. And as a result, what humans want is not to change. We want homeostasis. We want things not to be different because then it's not threatening. There's no chance of things going down. Unfortunately, that fear of change then compromises your ability to go up because you don't want to change. The reality is growth is available to us. If we go down this path, we might be able to actually improve. And so having that mindset that growth can be positive. Sorry, there's a wasp going above my head here. That growth can be positive. There is an opportunity here. There is something that can actually happen. That's where we can direct our focus and enable us to move through seasons of change. This is only through growth. It is only through change that possibilities exist for us to actually get better. I don't know if I answered your question very well on that one, but it's sort of a mindset approach to managing yourself through that season.
Now, and I think that that's a great response. With that, somebody might listen to this and say, I need to eat better. I need to sleep better. I need to exercise more. I need to breathe better. I need to do all of these things. And what's going to happen is they're going to do them all at once. And it's going to become that New Year's resolution that fizzles out within 3 weeks. How do we make sure that the change that we're trying to implement is something that lasts?
So once you've realized that you need to make a change, like you've recognized that something's not working, you're like, I need to change here. This is not going to work. And you can think about maybe a job that's no longer energizing you, or a relationship that's no longer elevating you, and you know that you need to make a change. It could be a career change. It could be a relationship change. It could be a health change, right? Like when you're presented with results from your doc and you're like, oh my gosh, my health has to change. We need to do things differently. In order to make sure that the changes that we then adopt actually stick, we have to recognize that change is hard. It costs energy. And so the less that you do, the higher the chance of success. So let's say you have to change your health. Say you got blood tests from your doc and you're like, those aren't good. I need to change so that my blood tests are better. My cholesterol improves, my inflammatory markers go down, like whatever it happens to be. The less you do, the better, because if it's a smaller change, then you're more likely to have the energy required to install that practice such that it becomes a habit which no longer requires so much energy to complete. Habit formation requires anywhere from 20 to 120 days, so 3 weeks to a few months. So it does take time. It does cost energy. So to make sure that habits and changes actually stick, do less. Do fewer. If you think you can make 3 changes, do 1. If you think that you can make 1 change, do half of that change. Like, you have to start so small, and then it's easy to grow. But most people try by making overwhelming changes. That usually doesn't work. So we want to do little tiny things consistently over an extended period of time. And that's how we structure and build a lifestyle and an environment that guarantees our success moving forwards.
And we start to shift from handling the change itself to the decisions we start to action for those changes. And that's going to bring us to our fire element segment, where we get into spark or burn. So when every decision matters, you only get to pick one. So we are going to play another elemental game here. This one is called Final Answer. I'm going to give you 2 tough options, no explanations, no backing out, just your final option on one or the other.
All right.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. More sleep or more time?
More sleep.
Lead a small team or lead a big one?
Small team.
A rest day or push through?
Oh, man. Rest day.
Working from home or in an office forever?
Oh, home for sure.
Unlimited focus or unlimited energy?
Unlimited energy.
Speak to 50 leaders or 5,000 employees?
50 leaders.
Perfect health or perfect productivity?
Perfect health.
Train your body or train your mind?
Train your mind.
Learn from success or learn from failure?
Yeah. Learn from failure.
Inspire one person deeply or inspire thousands briefly?
One person deeply.
Greg, what's the hardest decision you ever had to make as a leader?
I find the hardest thing to do as a leader is to, when you know that there's a change that needs to get made in the business and you know that that means that someone else is going to lose their job, that's the hardest thing for me, because my instinct is to take care of people and to take care of others before myself. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Like, I will do everything in my power to make sure everyone else is okay. And so letting someone go is always the hardest thing for me. And I know that it's harder for the person who's being let go. So I recognize that. Having said that, I also know that inevitably, whenever that happens, in the end, days, weeks, months, years later, it always works out for the better for that individual, because if that aspect of the business isn't working, it's no longer going to lead to them growing as much as they have the potential to do. So for me, it's always around, human resource changes, job changes, and letting people go. And I'm very, very, very lucky that I've only ever really worked with awesome people. The grad students that I had in my lab at the university were incredible. The people I interacted with at Sick Kids were awesome. The employees and consultants that I had in my company were fantastic. And so any changes that were ever made there were always really, really, really difficult. But in the end, the changes were made because, what we were doing wasn't working and a change needed to be made. It was better for the work that we were doing, and ultimately it was infinitely better for the individual as well. And I know that that's hard for people to go through, but when you have a reset it does provide you with the opportunity to evaluate what you were doing, where you really want to go, and how you want to build things in the future. So yeah, that's the hardest thing to do as a leader, I think.
So earlier we talked about that locus of control. How do you separate the emotion from the logic of those decisions?
Mm. Isn't it interesting that as that we have those two, that you have your mind and you have your physiological emotional reaction. If we really deconstruct it, your mind is electrical patterns in the brain. It's an emergent property of neural connections in the brain shooting electricity through to each other. Your emotions are hormones and chemicals that circulate throughout your body and make you feel a certain way. But that's the physiological, scientific, analysis of that. It doesn't change the fact that we experience that as the mind and emotions playing out in the body and the brain. And I see there's no separation between mind and body. So managing yourself through changes in your mind and your emotion are really, really difficult. I have found that over the last decade that I've been doing meditation very consistently and more, that my ability to become the observer of my mind and the observer of my emotions has improved. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There are certainly moments where my mind isn't, is going places I don't want it to. And certainly I've experienced emotions that I'm not proud of or that I don't like. But when you do meditation and you become the observer of your thoughts, you notice, hey, look, I see that I'm experiencing anger right now versus I am angry. Or I notice that I'm feeling anxious right now versus I am anxious, right? It's an experience rather than an identity. So when we shift out of this is who I am into this is what I'm experiencing, that enables you to realize that this is a short-term situation. It will end. This too shall end. And I think that that's been something that's really helped me through some of the darker, more challenging, uncomfortable experiences and moments in life that were really, 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 really rough.
How do you make sure your values show up in that decision then?
Well, your values are the fundamental foundation of all of your actions. And when you're clear about what you value, you then can check back on the decisions that you make to ensure that they are in alignment with your values. I had an incredible dinner with a young entrepreneur last night, and we, after breaking down what he was doing, we came to the realization that what he actually wants is to be the prime minister. And for your international audiences, the prime minister is the leader of Canada. It's the same as the president or whatever. It's a prime minister, the leader of the country. And I was like, okay, cool. So now everything that you do needs to be checked back against that. And so does public speaking help you on that role to become prime minister? Yes. Does sales help you to move along that role? For sure, because you have to communicate with people. Does leadership help you to move along that and practicing leading teams? Yes. And there was a couple other things that he was doing that clearly didn't align with that. And I was like, okay, well, then those are the ones that can go. So when you're clear about your goals, when you're clear about your values, when you're clear about what you believe in, that is what is the framework that enables you to make decisions that are in alignment with what you want in life. Where there is a separation between the decisions that you're making and your values and goals, that's what creates a lot of discomfort. And that's worth really digging into because your actions betray your priorities. And you're often setting goals and then maybe not taking the actions that are consistent with those goals. That gap is really important to lean into and to investigate and to understand. Because if you develop a true understanding about why you're doing certain things, especially if they don't align with your values and goals, which happens quite often for people, that's what leads you to be able to make the course corrections and the hard decisions under pressure that actually move you forwards. So yeah, that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but clear values, well identified goals, and then testing your actions and decisions against that is a very important practice to develop.
Doing something that is driven by a value makes the failure a lot easier to look at as just a way to not do something and as your next step forward. If it's not rooted in something, that failure carries that negative weight because you don't know why you failed or where it's leading you. So to have that mindset of this is what I'm doing and recognize it's a hard path, also recognize that everything along the way is going to build you to what you get to become. So I do hope that at some point, if this person does become prime minister, you reach out and you say, this was the person, we did it. Yeah, they got there.
I'll let you know.
So that we can have that connection. Dr. Wells, one thing that I've started on the show is my previous guest will leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who I'm interviewing next, when that interview is happening, what we're going to be talking about. So I am going to ask you to leave one for the next guest after, but let's answer what was left for you first. And I swear I don't line these up, but it somehow has worked again here. You go to the doctor and you're told you have only 1 year to live. What are you going to do differently now?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I have run up against this question before, actually. And the theme that has emerged for me is love. So if I only had a year to live, I would just lean more into love. What do I love to do? Who are the people that I love? Who are the people who love me? And I would spend as much of my time, effort, energy, and attention as I possibly could leaning into those activities and those people. And I'm very fortunate that I've tried to deliberately do that, so it wouldn't require a massive amount of change. But I definitely know that if I had 1 year left, there's a few dinners that I would have and a few conversations that I'd have for sure.
I appreciate the response. And not knowing who is getting interviewed next when that's happening, what question would you like to leave the next guest?
Right now, I think most people would agree that the world is unwell. Given your knowledge, skills, expertise, what do you think the most important shift for humanity needs to be moving forwards? I'd love to hear the answer to that.
Okay, just to make sure I've captured this. Right now, most people agree the world is unwell. Given your knowledge, skills, expertise, what do you think the most important shift for humanity needs moving forward?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'll make sure that gets to them. Dr. Greg Wells, how can people that have listened to the show that want to connect, get in touch with you, learn more, find your books, reach out?
So the website is drgregwells.com, and all my books are there, socials are there, newsletters there, podcast is there, 250 plus episodes. So would be thrilled to hear from everyone. And there's a contact page. So if you have an individual question or thought, just flip a message to me through the contact page and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
And you can find all of that in the description of this show when this episode airs. What is a final thought you want to leave the listeners with?
I think that right now the theme is change and growth. And we know that change is hard, but it leads to growth. And so I would encourage everyone who's listening to pause for a moment, reflect. I know you're going through something that's hard, but that is going to lead to you getting better. So give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of support to get through whatever that happens to be. Because I know that coming out the other side, things are going to be a lot better and you will grow and positively adapt as a result. So you can do this. Let's do it. You got this. You're gonna be okay. Let's move forwards together.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. If you have feedback, a suggestion, or just want to start a conversation, fire off an email to tyler@elementaleducator.com. I actually read them. And if this episode sparked something, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more leaders find the show. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, where I put out additional content. I'll see you next time, same time, same place.